What show's Netflix or one of the other streamers trying to force you to watch right now that you really, really don't want to?
For me, it is definitely Love is Blind, which is sort of perplexing to me. I don't know whether it's because I watched Bridgerton or something. It's like the closest I can think to, which isn't even that close. And if so, low blow, but I guess it's fair.
So I'm getting a lot of push for Adolescence, which I've actually heard is really good, but haven't seen it. But the other thing is that 98% of my TV viewing, because I have fallen into the cultural black hole known as parenting, is all child related. So Netflix thinks that I want to see like endless episodes of animated things that I do not want to see.
I share my Netflix with my boyfriend, and he loves all of the spy shows. So I'm constantly being bombarded with titles like Night Agent, which is somehow different from Night Manager.
Okay, but you know what should happen? I want to share a Netflix account with your boyfriend. Like that's me. We are the match. That is the dating app that I want to see. It just pairs you with people who have your Netflix personality.
This is Impromptu from Washington Post Opinions, a show that brings you conversations about the news we can't stop thinking about. I'm Molly Roberts, a columnist at The Post.
And I'm Drew Goins, author of the Today's Opinions newsletter. This week, we're talking about television. Here in our office, everybody seems to be talking about Severance and the White Lotus right now, which must be in full bloom considering how bad my allergies are. Sorry, everybody, including for that groan-worthy joke. Both of these shows are clearly of a certain type. You know, they're high production, real lean-in TV. You pour over every detail. Why are they capturing so many people's attention right now?
Are these shows just interesting because they aren't the ad-filled, cheaply made comfort viewing for mass audiences that make up most of our options these days? What is going on with television in the waning era of peak TV? And what does the valley we're heading for look like?
We're joined by our colleague, Monica Hesse, to talk through it all. Monica, welcome to Impromptu.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Okay, so to start off, the season finale of Severance was last night, but we promise that this episode of Impromptu won't include any spoilers. The basic premise is that these people can choose to get this brain procedure that makes their work life completely separate from their personal life. So these people split into two consciousnesses, their innie and their outie. So the question I want to ask is, you know, while Apple TV would like for us to try to enjoy each of its shows equally, there's a little Severance humor for you, this has become Apple TV's most watched ever. Why is that?
I think we're all obsessed with work. And it isn't always the work itself we're obsessed with. Sometimes it's kind of work as a social phenomenon. And Severance obviously explores those questions of capitalism as an alienated force, of labor exploitation, and also just the way that we act or feel like totally different people at work. You know, you're at work and you're saying stuff like, ping me, just wanted to circle back. I heard a new one that was horrible this week. It was, I'd like to double click on that. I heard it multiple times this week. I was at a blockchain conference, so maybe that's why, but it was a terrible thing.
I imagine that a blockchain conference is the vanguard of horrible work lingo.
I know, I should have picked up a few more and maybe even sent them Ben Stiller's way. But in any case, I think that those questions are questions that are engaging to all of us. And then, of course, Severance also deals with even heftier questions like, what is the self?
I think everything Molly said is true. And also, I think that it gets at, because we're following this core pod of 4 severed workers, in a weird way, it's like they might not like each other on the outside. They might not like each other even on the inside, but they're spending most of their waking hours with each other. So they become a weird kind of family. And I felt that way about every workplace that I've ever been in. You know, I moved to the opinion section pretty recently, but for 13 years before that, I sat across from my same colleague in the newsroom. And I miss him. I miss seeing him every day because the people that you work with, you get to know their rhythms and their oddities. And Severance just explores that in such a strange and meaningful way.
Yeah, no, I like that. I mean, I was a big fan of Friends, and I do feel like it's a neat subversion of sitcom trope of we're going to put you all in this one environment, like the apartment in Friends or the office in Severance or the office in the office. And we're going to see how all of you interact. So I think that, again, the kind of flipping of that is a cool thing on Severance. And the fact that then on the outside, they are nowhere near each other makes it, you have that trope and then you have the complete opposite of that trope.
Right. You have a character like Dylan in Severance who gets obsessed over collecting finger traps, and you can kind of laugh at how ridiculous that is. And then the next day I'll get an email that's like, oh, free bagels in the conference room. And we flip out over that, like just like their finger traps. We're so excited about it.
So let's turn to HBO's White Lotus. We're in the middle of season 3. Each season has a similar format. At the very beginning, we get a scene from the end of the show. It's usually horrible. There's a dead body involved. And then the rest of the season gets us to that moment. And the White Lotus always takes place at a ritzy White Lotus brand resort. It features very rich people with really attractive lives and often really attractive faces. And then it turns out that those lives are awful beneath the shiny surface. Do you guys like White Lotus? And why do you think so many people find it compelling?
So I'm a big White Lotus fan. I've watched every episode so far. For most of the episodes, actually, I and a group of friends have treated it as appointment viewing, and we get together on Sunday and we have dinner together, or at least, wine and some charcuterie. And we watch the episode and holler and yell together. But the thing that I really love about White Lotus and really respect about it, and this applies to Severance too, is that both of these shows have this real bait and switch structure, right? With the White Lotus, you have this dead body that shows up at the beginning of every season. And in a lesser show, it would mostly be about this mystery of the dead body, right? Severance on its surface is this puzzle of a TV show. It's like a classic puzzle box, the way that Lost was. But whereas Lost was all about, why are we on this island? What's this black smoke monster? And then it never really dove that deep into the humanity of everything. Severance is a show about work and identity and grief and trauma masquerading as this show about a nefarious company. We're given bits and pieces of that, enough to keep the puzzle box enthusiasts interested. And in White Lotus, of course, it doesn't ignore the dead body plot. If you want a murder mystery, you can treat White Lotus as a murder mystery. But they juke so much, both of these shows, and the meat is really just about the human experience, these much bigger questions that we're kind of tricked into wrestling with.
Yeah, Monica, are you a White Lotus fan?
So I've watched about a season and a half, and the season that I watched while I was on maternity leave, and it was such beautiful scenery that I think it does this really neat trick of taking you along on these gorgeous vacations that you could never afford, but simultaneously making you glad you're not on them because terrible things keep happening. So it's both a way of envying the class privilege that you see and also skewering the class privilege at the same time. And I think that that's what I really enjoyed, is that just as you get lulled into this exorbitantly expensive, beautiful resort, you can simultaneously hate the people who are staying there. And that's really pleasurable.
People refer to Friends or The Office as comfort viewing, but with White Lotus and Severance, there's this element of schadenfreude that to me also makes it comfort viewing. My work life at least isn't as bad as Mark S's or Helly R's. My vacations are not as bad as these people trapped at White Lotuses.
That's funny. I was surprised when you said schadenfreude, because I obviously have that on my mind too, but only for White Lotus. Because these people's lives look a lot better than most of ours. And then we're able to smugly leave an episode saying I'm glad I don't have millions of dollars in the body of Aphrodite. And then I think also a big part of the enjoyment for me is with the comedy of manners, social satire stuff. A lot of the jokes, I feel like I'm sort of being winked at, and I've caught the wink. I get it. So it leaves me feeling sort of in the know, even though I'm not in this social stratum that these people occupy.
Monica, you mentioned escapism, or you hinted at it. Is there something about these shows that is allowing us to just unplug from our phones, from the news cycle? Are they popular particularly because of the moment we're in?
You used the phrase appointment television earlier, and I think that the way that we view television has changed so much that those cultural touchstones are fewer and fewer between. But I do think that when something lights on fire that's being watched by everyone, or at least being watched by most people that you know, it's pleasurable to be able to come to work on Friday or to be able to log on, on Tuesday and have something to talk about that is not the dumpster fire that we are living in on a daily basis. Just nice to have a go-to bit of conversation that you could start talking about the news, or you could take a deep breath and you could say, so do you really think that so-and-so is a double agent, blah, blah. And I think that the escapism doesn't come as much from what is on the screen as it just comes from our ability to have something to think about that's not our current reality.
Yeah, I love that. Our brains, or at least my brain, yearns in some way for analysis. Like I want to analyze, and at some point it becomes just exhausting to analyze the actual world we're living in. And watching these shows that are cerebral and have a lot going on and a lot to unpack feels like analysis with training wheels. There's an element of this that's like, watching these shows is like doing a crossword puzzle a little bit.
Yeah.
Like it scratches this analytical urge that is so much messier out in the real world.
Yeah, no, 100% agree. I think that there's a certain type of TV viewer who appreciates shows that are intellectually engaging because we're simultaneously able to sit on the couch being entertained and to feel smart about it rather than like we're just these slack-jawed, chip-munching, passive consumers.
Yeah. We're going to zoom out and talk about the bigger questions of what's happening with TV and whether it can still bring us all together, like Monica said. But that's right after the break.
Welcome back. I'm Molly Roberts, and this is Impromptu. We talked before the break about so-called prestige television. That's these big-budget, appointment viewing type shows that are, for lack of a better way of putting it, actually good, not just brain-rotting mush. But the most streamed shows in February were mostly on Netflix. Things like Sweet Magnolias, Cobra Kai, and Love is Blind, none of which I have seen. Now that we've moved past the streaming wars when venture capital poured into high-quality shows to attract subscribers, are we returning to an earlier era of TV where shows were more formulaic and accessible? And is there any appeal to that for you guys?
I'll just out myself. There's a huge amount of appeal to that for me because you need lots of different kinds of TV, and everybody knows that you can't fold laundry to Severance. You will always need laundry folding shows, and that's why I'm a sucker for... I'm a sucker for any kind of Law and Order SVU marathon. Put that on and I'm good for all day long because you can go in, you can, clean the kitchen, walk back, Kathy Bates is the killer, and, all is right with the world. So I think that there's good television and bad television, but there are also just forms of entertainment that serve different purposes in our lives or different phases in our lives.
To use a favorite Severance meme, your Audi folds laundry every 3 days while watching The Sopranos.
Yeah, I think more than a lot of other forms, people treat television as a monolith, as though television has one sort of thing it ought to be. I think in the era of prestige TV, we really got caught in a trap of thinking that shows should be like this, that shows that aren't cerebral and thinky and, really involved are somehow lesser. But I was doing a little research. I, like Molly, have not seen the show, but I learned that on Sweet Magnolias, the characters have a margarita pitcher every episode, and every episode, it's a different flavor. And I'm like, I want in on this show.
Do they not run out of flavors? I mean, what do we have here? Like durian banana?
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, it feels a little donuts for dinner, but sometimes donuts for dinner is like exactly what you want, especially after you've been having a lot of really nutritious television. But what does appeal to me as we're headed into Valley TV rather than peak TV, theoretically, is the super specific tailored concept as stuff gets made not to be 100 people's 9th favorite thing, but 9 people's favorite thing. I would like to follow along with someone who spends, half the episode baking scones and then half the episode solving a low-stakes mystery, which I guess is just Murder, She Wrote.
You just want Murder, She Wrote.
Exactly. I'm realizing I just described Murder, She Wrote. But the issue is I'm skeptical of the quality of these, especially as we enter not just into Valley TV, but the creator economy too, which we're hearing so much more of. And so much of, TV is going to be happening on TikTok or Instagram or in these shorter forms, web series, that's really like a race to the bottom of production cost.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree with that. I think that at peak TV, the idea was there was enough money to make these super tailored shows, but they were actually good.
Right.
And now I don't think we're getting fewer shows. I mean, I see on Netflix we're not getting fewer shows because they're pushing a ton at me, but they're just way more cheaply made. And as we move into an era where AI is more heavily involved in TV shows, I think there's going to be more of that. So you're going to have shows that are good, but there are going to be fewer of them, and they're not going to be as carefully tailored.
Yeah, I think that television is such an important cultural connector. And to me, I'm not as worried about, are we losing prestige shows? Are shows getting worse? I think that shows will get worse and then get better, and we'll experiment with the form, and we'll discover some new stuff. I do love the idea, though, somehow that there will always be shows that I can talk about with my dentist and my father-in-law and, a random person that I meet on the street, and we'll have that cultural encyclopedia that we both agree on, especially as we're in an era of disputed facts where we're not sharing the same realities. I kind of cling to that idea that even if it is schlock like Sweet Magnolia, if we're all watching Sweet Magnolia, at least that gives us something that we're all doing together. So that's my hope for television, that whatever it is that we're watching, we can find a way that broad swaths of people want to watch it together and have something, for God's sake, that we can talk with each other about.
I mean, Monica, what show is that for you right now that you're talking with your parents about or your dentist about?
So this is going to sound like a totally insane answer, and it is, but I have a 3-year-old, so we try not to have the television on unless it's family movie time, and family movie time usually means we're watching like 5 episodes of Bluey, and Bluey is a phenomenal show.
Knew this is what,
And yeah, it really is. And when my friends talked about it before I had kids, I thought that they had honestly just lost their minds, and I wrote them off as like, oh my God, you poor parents, don't have children. This is what happens to you. But it's a really well-crafted show. And I'm down here in Florida on vacation in a part of the world that has very different politics than the place of the world where I usually live next to. But, I see Bluey shirts and I see like Bluey games in the grocery store, and having that parenting become a universal cultural experience that crosses political boundaries and that crosses socio and economic boundaries and just becomes a story of how everyone wants the best for their kids, and every single parent is absolutely freaking exhausted and just wants something to put on the television for 20 minutes is kind of unifying. Do I sound like an absolute nutty person right now?
No. I mean, I hearing this, I get a little jealous, I guess. I feel like I need to have a kid to get in on the monoculture, or else the next time I have 15 gay guys over to my apartment, I can suggest we put on Bluey after White Lotus finishes. I'm joking, but there's some seriousness to that because my parents watch, Yellowstone, and they watch The Voice, and those are the things that they talk to the people in their, neighborhood about. And I don't watch either of those shows, and I don't really have anything beyond, Jeopardy, to talk to my parents about. I mean, the other thing that occurred to me was like the Olympics, right? Where are we in personalization and algorithmically delivered content that the only thing that I can talk to the middle-aged people at my gym about is something that happens once every 4 years.
Yeah, or like March Madness. It's like you got to piggyback onto a team just so you have something to offer to that conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking about the Bluey thing, and I was thinking a little bit about Severance and the idea that the severed versions of these people are kind of stripped down to their most basic selves, not informed by any of their trauma or any of the social context in which they've lived. And I suppose that a children's show gets at that same sort of just pure, uncorrupted version of ourselves. And maybe that's the easiest basis on which to connect nowadays. And I'm not sure what that says.
It severs me from my adult brain. That's what the show does. It just severs me from the pressures of daily life.
So do you guys think television is good right now?
I said that the Severance finale, again, no spoilers, was the best episode of television I think I've ever seen. So as of last night, television was good. It'll probably be 6 years before we have Severance season 3. I think we're kind of in the twilight of really, really, really good television, and I want to cling to that as long as I can.
I think that as long as I can find one or two shows at a time that give me an hour or two a week to feel immersed and excited and intrigued, like that's good enough for me. I've got low expectations right now. And I think that if you've got one or two things you can watch, it can be good enough and something better will come along.
Well, we are out of time, or at least our innies are. It was great talking to both of you guys.
Great talking to you too, Molly. Ding! That's me becoming my outie again.
The elevator's gone up. No!
This episode was produced by Hadley Robinson and Regina DeHeer, edited by Demir Marusik, Chris Sulentrop, and Allison Michaels, and mixed by Emma Munger. Special thanks to Millie Mitra and Deirdre Byrne. Thanks for listening to Impromptu. Please send us your thoughts about these shows and what's happening with television today generally. Email impromptu@washpost.com. And be sure to tune in Tuesdays to hear Dana Milbank tackle the biggest political news of the moment. As always, if you're enjoying the show, please rate us and leave a review on your favorite podcast app.